Hello. This is Els coming from Bemis Crafty Corner, and today we're going to be doing this project right here. This is an altered cardboard coaster. So basically what I did is I took some round cardboard coasters that I got on a scavenger, and I altered them and added some cork to the back to make a bigger, better, stronger set of coasters, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So hold on while I get you a list of supplies, and we shall take a look at this project. Okay, so to get started on this, what you're going to do is you're going to paint your pieces with just some gesso. Now, if you don't have these paper coasters, you could pretty much get the same effect using the largest circle die in a set of layered circles and about 4 pieces of 22-point chipboard. And this is 22-point chipboard is kind of the equivalent of like a cereal box. So all you would do is just cut 3 to 4 of these, depending upon how thick you wanted it. Just glue those together and then just gesso this just like you would the paper coaster. Okay? Okay. Now, if you want, now we've got 2 coats of a gesso on here, and it has dried. So I'm going to go ahead and put some gesso on the other side. You don't have to do this, but I just kind of like the fact that it's got that grit to it, and it's got a little bit of hold, and it'll make adhering the bottom piece onto this later a little bit better. So go ahead and go ahead and gesso both sides, get a couple of coats on there if you need to, and when it's all dry, I'll be right back and we will get started on putting these together. Alright, so now that I have this gessoed on both sides, I like to put a base coat on just to start. So what I'm using today is some Anita's Glossy White, and I've got just about 4 parts white to about 1 part of gunmetal gray metallic. And I'm going to be using a sponge to put this on because I don't want brush marks here, and I don't want, you know, those lines. So I'm just going to be using a sponge to put this on and just daubing it on here kind of liberally. And this is going to give me a little bit of texture, and I don't want a lot of texture on the piece, so just a little bit of texture, and I'm just going to set that to the side, and I'll continue doing that with all of these. And if you want to put on a base coat, now would be a good time to do that. If you don't, then that's fine as well. But I'm going to go ahead and get started on just putting a nice light gray base on all of my pieces, okay? And then I'll be right back. Alright, so I have my beautiful base color on here, and it has some nice texture to it. Because I sponged it on. I did take some time to go ahead and paint around the edge. I'm not worried about the other side because I'm going to be putting cork on the back. So I've decided that I am going to Mod Podge napkins onto these. So I've selected 2 napkins because I have 6 of these and only 4 panels. So I've got 2 napkins here, and just in case you don't know how to do this, just take a piece of clear cello tape, put it on, pull it up, and that's going to separate the bottom. It comes off pretty easy after that. And then some napkins are 3-ply, and you may not know if you have a 2 or a 3, so just go ahead and give it a quick test. If it pulls apart again, you've got a 3-ply napkin. This one might be a little bit harder to get off, so you might want to go a little slower. And this one has a very light print on it from the napkin itself. So you may want to save this to use in another project. So I keep my Mod Podge in a squirt bottle, and I am working on the same piece of paper that I've been painting on to protect my surface. So I have my Mod Podge, I have my Mod Podge brush, I have my napkins, and I'm ready to go ahead and start decoupaging the napkins on. I am going to get some water and kind of clear a little bit of space here so I have some space to work, and I'll be right back. Alright, so these are completely dry, and I have my Mod Podge. So I'm going to be putting some on. I'm going to work one at a time here. And then I am just going to spread this out. I don't want to go too thick, but I don't want to be too thin. I'm going to spread a nice coat of that on there. And then I'm going to take my napkin, get these out of the way. And I'm going to decide what part of my napkin I want on. I'm going to press that on. Now you see I'm actually going to just leave the napkin whole at this point. And I'm going to do all 4 of these at once. Okay, so we're going to bring in the next one. Mod Podge. See, people say I never get messy. I do so. We're going to give this a turn. Place this one down. And adjust my napkin a little bit. There we go. Press. And move on to the next one. So I'm going to go ahead and do this with all 6 of these. And I'm going to get them all done. And once they're done, and I have them on here, I'm going to Mod Podge over the top of them. Okay, so for the next part, these are the ones that I did with the Mod Podge, and they are dry. So I went ahead and cut them apart. And I noticed that on some of these, like the part I liked was this writing in the corner, and I kind of lost it. So I want to recreate that. So to do that, I'm going to use some StazOn so that it doesn't run. And this is Cloudy Sky. It's gray, okay? It's not black. Now, important when you're stamping, use a stamp block that's appropriate to the stamp you're using. So I'm going to be using this piece of a stamp here, and this is just part of my favorite collections. I've got a few pieces that I use all the time that are like postal cancellations, little bits of elaborate script and things like that. And as you can see, this is like my favorite set. I use this on everything. So I picked out a piece that I like, and when I put it on a stamp block, I don't want it to be this big, okay? I want the stamp block to be appropriately sized to the stamp that I'm using. So I'm just going to put this on my little stamper, my little one, and I'm going to use what's called a second generation stamp. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this up real quick. Okay. And let me move this a little bit out of the way here so that we can look at this. So now that I have this inked, if I stamp it and I hold it, it's going to come out pretty dark. What I want is the second generation. That's the second stamp. See how light it is? That's what I want on this, because I don't want this to look like really bright ink on here. I want it to look almost as if it's worn off. Now, you can get a similar effect by stamping it and then Mod Podging your piece down, but even with the StazOn, you're going to run the risk that it's going to shift a little bit, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and ink this up. I'm going to do a first generation, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to put in my second generation stamp. Let it set for a second so that it actually bleeds in there. We want it to set in, and it's just a very faint little bit. Now I might want to add some darker over here, and maybe a little bit right here, a little darker. Okay? The idea is to just put this on very lightly across the piece. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of these. Same thing. I'm going to ink, stamp, restamp. Okay? Giving me that faint line. Ink, stamp, restamp. Alright? And I'm going to change the direction here, and I think I'm going to come in with some darker over here. And maybe a nice dark one right here. Okay. So the idea is that I have the napkin, and the napkin's pretty much the same design on all four pieces, and I want to make it look a little bit different. So I'm going to come in and just stamp in pieces so that I just get a little bit here and there. Okay, it's kind of stamping off the edge here with a combination of first and second generation stamps. And holding them for various lengths of time so that the ink has a chance to adhere or not adhere. Okay, so now that I have some first and second generation stamps on here and some French script that I like, the next step is going to be to seal that on. And I want to add some glitter to these, but I don't want to put like glitterific on it. So what I'm going to be using is the Americana Starlight Varnish. It is a glittering varnish, much like Mod Podge. So I'm going to get a nice brush. I'm going to give this a really good shake. And I'm going to put some on here. Pick this one up. And I'm just going to paint this over the top. Making sure that I get the edges. And I do want to do this fairly smooth. I don't want to leave too many ridges in it. As you can see, there's just a vast amount of reflection here. And I'll show you once it's dry so that you're not just getting liquid. Okay? This stuff has so much glitter in it. And it's very Aurora Borealis, very multiple colored. Hey man, I don't want you in my picture. Get out of here. All the way to the edge. Okay. Dry. Dry, 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 dry. Let's get started on these. So, a couple of ways that you can release this. The easiest way I have found is just to use a little bit of water and just paint around the edge. But Els, you told me to paint the finish to the edge and now it's sealed. Yep, I know. We'll get to that. So I just kind of go around it with a little bit of water here on a brush. Get it good and wet. Let me get these out of the way real quick and then move on. So yes, there's going to be scraps left, and I'm going to show you how to deal with those, okay? So we go around here and just paint all of this with some water, and that helps to kind of tear up the napkin without, you know, destroying our work. And once we have that done, we can kind of pull this off towards the back. And we just want to take off as much as we can with our fingers. And we're just going to let that set for a second and dry. And we're going to do all of them exactly the same. I'm just going to pull that off as much as we can, as close as we can to the piece. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. See that? People say I never get dirty. All right, so we're going to let those dry real quick. Get a little more off of there. Okay. And I'm going to bring this one up. Now, this one has just been watered and torn. So there's a couple of ways that you can do this. You can take a nail file or a piece of sandpaper. You can sand this off, and that will clean it up. And I tend to kind of go around sanding towards the back. Okay, and that's option number one. And that pretty much gets it all off of there. Option number two is to take a pair of scissors and trim as close as you can to the piece, just kind of taking those little bits and pieces off of there. What a mess. Option number three is to take a little bit of Mod Podge or whatever sealer you're using and a brush and just kind of paint it down. And any of the leftover, just paint it over to the back. That is option number 2 and 3. And option number 4 is to kind of do a combination of the two. You can paint this down and then go over it with a piece of sandpaper or a file to clean it up. And how you do this is entirely up to you. Okay, now let me show you a little bit of that glitter effect. Okay, now it's going to be really hard to see, so you need to look right by my hand. But I'm going to hold this up to the camera, and I'm going to put my hand up here, and then I'm going to turn this so it catches the, there it is. Do you see that? See that glitter in there? That's what the Starlight Varnish does. Okay, so for the next part of this, I want to black the edge, and I want to round it with some ink, but I still want to black the edge. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some black paint, and I'm going to put it on this is my black paint paper. I'm just going to hold on to this, and I'm just going to tap the paint along the edge here. This is going to seal this really well. And I'm going to keep as much of the paint at the tip of the bristles as I can. And I don't want to get paint on the front, so I'm going to be really careful here to kind of tap and go. So all I'm doing is just barely tapping that, okay? Because I don't really want to get paint on the front. Okay, they have been primed, painted, decoupaged, stamped, inked, painted, And we're now down to the sealing. So to seal these, I am going to be using some Minwax oil modified water-based polyurethane clear satin. I am doing this under my camera, but please be assured that I am in a very well ventilated space. I have a ceiling fan, I have a fan blowing over my desk. I have an air purifier, and I have a sliding glass door right next to me that is wide open to prevent any issues with the vapors. I have this sitting on my paint board on a rack that I use for my pour paint. And it's just an old cookie rack, you know, like a drying rack that I picked up in a thrift store, and I just use it for this purpose. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 1-inch Craftsmart brush. I'm going to dip it in here and just kind of take some of the excess off, and I'm going to seal these with a fairly liberal coat, just going completely across each one of them. And I don't want to create any bubbles while doing this, but I do want to put a liberal amount on. So just nice, even brush strokes here. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can finish these if you want to. You could do a resin pour. You could use multiple layers of like triple thick if you want it to. But for me, my favorite has always been just plain old polyurethane. And what I'm going to do is put a nice coat here, and then I'm going to let this dry completely. And once it's completely dried, I'm going to come back in with a very light sandpaper. I'm going to give it a very quick sanding. And I'm going to wipe it off, and then I'm going to sand it. I'm going to coat it another time. I'll probably put 2 or 3 coats on these before the finished product, just to give them that glass thickness on the top. And then once that's all done, I will come back and we will finish these up, okay? Okay, so for the next part, we're going to be using some adhesive cork sheet. This one is Crafter Square. I picked it up at the Dollar Tree, and it is 11 3/4 by 7 3/4 inches, and it is just large enough to cut out 6 circles, the exact size that we need. Now, if you cut them on the back, it's going to cut all the way through. If you cut them with your die on the front, 2 things are going to happen. 1, you're going to end up with little bits of adhesive cork on your die. And 2, it's not going to cut all the way through this paper backing. And see, we really want it to do that, okay? So, pull this one out of here. So I now have 6 of these, and I am going to bring out the pieces that we've altered, and we'll get them finished, okay? Okay, so we have our redesigned coasters. We have our pieces of cork that we have cut to go on the back, and now we have to put them on. So there's a couple of choices here. You can go with like a rubber cement if you want. Absolutely, this will work. It's pretty easy of an application since it comes with its own brush. You can go with some 3-in-1 if you want. Whatever glue works for you. I'm going to be using some Clear Grip Gorilla Glue. And I am going to put it on the back of my piece. Okay. Now, this is adhesive cork, so I'm really just using the glue as a kind of secondary here. So we'll put some on there. Get the lid on that so it doesn't burp. And then I'm going to take one of my pieces here and just remove the adhesive paper from the back. And then I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to very carefully line it up. Now, it's slightly smaller than the coaster. Then I'm going to firmly press this down. Now, at this point, you can use your brayer, and that will help to kind of press this down and make sure that we get it firmly set. I'm just going to press it down with my fingers. And then I'm going to set this off to dry on the side. And I'm just going to do that to all of these, and I'll be right back with the finished products. All right, so here they are. Project complete. We have applied our cork to the bottom, and we have painted our edges. Now, you could go back over this and paint the edge on the cork if you want to. I just kind of like the way that the cork looks, and it allows it to absorb any moisture that might get past the cozy itself. Next project's going to be making a case to hold these. I just have to work out the logistics. So until I see you again, I want to thank you so much for checking this video out. If you haven't done so already, hit that red button for me. Like me, ring my bell, and share me with all your friends, because I made some coasters. Well, you know, I upscaled some coasters. Till the next time, guys. Bye-bye.